morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Here we are. So I am Terry Swartz-Russell, the Director of Family and Adult Education at Temple Emmanuel. And thanks to our wonderful committee of people who are driving this Death Cafe initiative, which I know not everybody likes the name, but we want to thank Arza Goldstein and Sid Josephi and Rick Thau, who have been working diligently for over a year. We've been coming together, I don't know, every 6 weeks or so to explore different topics. And today we're thrilled to have Suzanne, Rabbi Suzanne Offit with us, and I'm going to let Arza Goldstein introduce her, and then we'll get underway. So thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. Thank you for everybody for coming. So nice to see everybody.
Happy coming.
Allow me to introduce Rabbi Suzanne Offit. She is a board certified chaplain, focusing her work as a hospice palliative care chaplain and supporting patients and families experiencing serious illness in the complex medical, ethical, and spiritual worlds. Suzanne's superpower is deeply listening to each person before her. An alumni of Hebrew College Rabbinical School, she mentors students interested in professional chaplaincy, and she also creates and produces varied communal programming with Hebrew College leadership. She proudly serves on the national boards of AJWS, Jewish Women's Archives, Neshama, Association of Jewish Chaplains, and local organizations in her home near Boston. In addition to caring for her patients, staff, and community, she cares for her 12 honeybee hives, 4 chickens, 3 adult sons. One is behind her. His name is Yoni. Thank you, Yoni, and her husband. So welcome, Suzanne. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Arza. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here with everyone. And a special thanks to Sid Josephi, who asked me what feels like light years ago to participate in this program. So I'm just very excited. And also thanks to Yoni. He's in the screen because he's like my emotional support dog. He eases my tech anxiety because I'm going to be going in and out of share screen. I really needed Yoni here with me. And he's also going to be watching the chat. So I'm very appreciative. So welcome to How to Talk to People You Love About Topics That You Don't Love. And I'm going to start with a few questions just to take the temperature in the Zoom room, see who's here and what people are thinking about. Just a few questions. There's no final exam. So the first question I have is, who is here because you're a regular at the Temple Emmanuel Death Cafe series? Okay. And who's here for the topic, whether intrigue or aversion, or you want to hear what I have to say? Okay. All right, good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, here's a big question. I appreciate if you raise your hand, but sometimes these questions are hard. Who thinks about death? Good. I'm proud of you. And who thinks about your own death? Bravo. Who thinks about a loved one's death in the past, perhaps with a little regret? Who thinks about, I wish I had said maybe something? Who thinks about, I wish I had known? Right. Okay, good. Well, thank you for being so honest. Here's my last question. Who has a dream or a fantasy or just a really strong desire to have a conversation with someone you love, but you can't quite get yourself to do it? Really? You all can really have all those conversations you ever wanted to have? I'm impressed. Okay. So here we are. So I just wanted to thank you very much for that. I wanted to have a little understanding of who's in the room here, but also a sense of maybe give you a sense of relaxing. So now you're more open-hearted and ready to learn. So I want to tell you a little bit about how I come to sharing this information with you. So some of it is reading and research, but most of it comes from a lot of experience as a rabbi and a palliative care chaplain, right? A palliative care hospital chaplain. So palliative care comes out of the discipline of hospice. Hospice is really just dignity and comfort at death. And a palliative care chaplain works with patients and families and staff around decision-making, and also serve as interpreter. I'll give you a little story. Let's say I have a patient and her name is Ida, and she comes into the hospital after having a stroke, and it has altered her life, right? She cannot go home live the way she did. So oftentimes I might serve as an interpreter. The doctor comes in with a lot of lingo, and I might be able to translate or interpret between the family and the doctor. I also interpret between staff and families, right? Each family, a religion or an ethnicity, those are different ways of being in the world. And it's also important for staff to understand what's important to Jewish patients, for instance. So I do that level of interpreting. But also the most important interpreting that I do is when there's a big loving family around a crisis and they're trying to communicate with each other, and maybe they're not at their best or they don't have the right words. So a lot of what a chaplain does, aside from helping relieve anxiety, bedside prayers, all those things, is we do a lot of communication. We do a lot of communication amongst loved ones. So anyone familiar with these kinds of circumstances? Right? Difficult situations in a hospital or learning to live in a new way after a diagnosis or an incident. It's all about communication. That's where we are. We're all about communication. So I'm going to tell you a familiar story, right? Do you know the story of the gift of the Magi? Right? It's a young husband. He's poor and he wants to give his beautiful wife a gift. So he has this gold pocket watch, and he decides to sell his gold watch to buy a beautiful beret for his wife's gorgeous flowing hair, right? And his wife wants to buy her husband a gift, and she decides she's going to cut off her hair and sell it so he can have a chain for his watch. So what are we left with? We're left with a chain and no watch, and a beret and no hair, right? Two loving people not communicating. So I'm going to encourage you, even in your deepest love, to have hard conversations with people, because we need to communicate not only our hopes and our dreams, but we have to communicate our worries and our anxieties. So much of our time is going to be focused on the how of the communication. But before we go any further, I want to talk about briefly the why. The why are we having these important conversations? There are two reasons, and the two reasons are love and goodbyes. The first is love. And we've learned this even more so during the COVID era. We need love. We need connection. And the bedrock of love and connection are meaningful conversations. We need to give and receive love. And these loving relationships give our lives meaning, but these loving relationships also are equally as nourishing as food and water. Right? So we need to have loving, communicative, meaningful relationships and conversations. The second reason is goodbye. So efforts like the Death Cafe and the Conversation Project continue to affirm and reaffirm the value of talking about end of life and being able to say goodbye with love and comfort and without fear and anxiety. And these goodbyes take practice. And these conversations take practice. You can't all of a sudden have them in a very intense moment. So we want to work up to that, but we need to ask people, what do you want at the end of life? What do you want your last few days, your last few weeks? And if we can make the choice, what do we want our last few months to look like? So Jewish tradition teaches us to treat each day as if it's your last day. And why? Why is that important? Because we never want to miss an opportunity to say, I love you, or thank you, or I'm sorry, or I'm proud of you, right? So this is the why. We can talk about that another time. Invite me back. We'll have a whole talk about the why. But today we're mostly talking about the how, right? The how are we going to have these conversations? So I'm going to give you another story, and I'm going to share the story with you because it's so easy to see other people's mistakes, and it's really hard to see our own. So I'm going to share a story with you, and then we're going to talk about how we might do it differently. So this is an actual story. I had a patient who had a serious fall, and she was in her late 70s, just so you know, spoiler alert, she goes home, she's fine, she healed great. And her daughter was coming in to visit her, and her daughter was part of her plan to go home and heal. Everything worked out fine. But her daughter came in, and I'm in the room with her mom, and the daughter is just texting on her phone, text. And she lifts her head up and she says hello, and she text. And then she sees that I'm waiting there, and she says to me, oh, I have to talk to my daughter. I'm so angry. And she's texting. And I'm thinking, you know, this is really hard because she's in the sandwich generation. She's having a problem with her daughter, and she's also dealing with her mom. So I have a lot of rachmanis for that. And she's texting, and she's really aggravated. And I just said, I'm so sorry to hear this. Must be really hard for you. And then she's texting away, and she says to me, my daughter came home from her freshman year of college, and I'm just really angry at her because she went right to her boyfriend's, and I haven't seen her in days. Text. And I said, wow, I would be really hurt too. When my kids came home from college, I just wanted to hug them. And she kind of heard me, and she started to weep a little bit. So let's take a step back. And again, because it's so easy to look at other people's mistakes, what might have been another way to address this issue? Any thoughts? You can raise your hand, unmute yourself, speak slowly, whatever. Any ideas how this situation might have worked differently?
Could you say how you're defining the situation? Are you talking about the context with the daughter or the?
Good question. So I'm talking about this very stressed out mom who says she's angry with her daughter, and all they're doing is texting about it. Thank you, Phoebe. Okay. Does anyone want to say anything, or should I just jump to the conclusion? Judith, I know you have good things to say. My friend Judith Himber, I know she has things to say.
Just jump. Just jump.
Just
We'll
jump.
get
Okay, thank you. So, first of all, when we're hurt by someone, I would suggest we don't text. I know that our children text, and that's what they do, but I would go around that. And maybe start with a phone call or say, please call me. I would like to talk to you. And then maybe ask permission. I want to talk to you about something that's important to me. When you have a minute, please call me. And then say, I'm so sad. I miss you. I understand you want to see your boyfriend. And please know that I also want to see you. Please tell me when you can come home so I can hug you too. Right? So that sounds very simple. And this is one of the problems of technology. We have a lot of the silver lining of technology right here, but technology is not always a good way to communicate with people if we're hurt or we're sad. I would recommend voice to voice, and typing with aggravation is not always our best bet. Okay, so we're going to move on.
So Suzanne,
Yes.
this is Terry. I
Hi,
found it very strange that she was, you know, typing to her daughter or you know, texting her daughter and talking about communication and the lack thereof, and yet she was in the room with her mother, completely ignoring her mother. So, you know.
That's why I asked, how do you define the situation? I was wondering about the same thing.
Well, that's also part of it. My sense was she was so overwhelmed with her hurt, which she felt as anger, that she couldn't even pay attention to her mother in front of her, that she had made her way to the hospital and couldn't even communicate with her mother, who also needed her, right? She was upset with her daughter for ignoring her, and she was doing the same thing to her mom. See, it's so easy when we watch other people's problems, Phoebe.
Well, I'm wondering whether part of the reason she was texting to her daughter was that it was really, really deeply uncomfortable for her to be in the room facing what her mother was going through at this time.
Yes. Excellent. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else? I mean, we could stay on this one example all day. That it's so rich, right? Which is why we need to talk to each other. We need to talk to each other honestly and openly, and before the crisis hits. So we have a history of communicating with each other in patient and kind and gentle ways. I'll give you another example. This is a personal example with my mother-in-law, who has the same name as I do, Suzanne Offit. And we have a great relationship. I feel very blessed. She's 86 years old. She's active. She plays tennis. She's like walks 3 miles a day. And my husband is her oldest child. So I think he's her healthcare proxy. She's had a lot of loss in her life, and she does not like talking about illness or death. But I wanted to talk to her. So I said to her, I want to talk to you about, something that I know is going to be hard for you, but it's really, really important to me. So I'm hoping that you'll give me a few minutes. So she said yes. And I said, I know this is hard, but I just wanted to have an idea if you have any plans or wishes. And then she knew she knows me. She goes, I know, I have it all set. I have my cemetery plot. I've talked to the lawyer, all the papers in order. I said, that's good, but I want to know, God forbid something happens to you. What are your wishes? What do you, if you call 911, what do you want to happen? And she said, oh, it's on my refrigerator. There's a note. If I call 911, I don't want them to resuscitate me. I said, oh, good. So you do not resuscitate. She said, yes, yes, yes. I said, well, thank you for telling me, because we're your healthcare proxies and I needed to know that. So that was all she could take in that moment. I could tell. So that's all we talked about. But it was a conversation that had to be had. And I needed to ask permission, and I needed to go slowly enough that she could answer the questions in her own way. And this is my suggestion of moving forward into these kinds of conversations. So I have a 3-step process for entering these conversations: preparing yourself, preparing the other person, and then breathing. So this is where I need Yoni. Yeah. Thanks, Yoni. Okay, next. Okay. Okay. So there are 3 steps into the meaningful conversation. So the first step is to explore, and we'll get into that. So we need to explore how we're feeling. We just do a lot of exploration why we're anxious. The next step is to ask permission. We need to prepare the other person that we want to jump into a conversation. Well, not quite jump into a conversation. That's could be prickly. And the last one is we need to breathe. We just need to breathe to create space. Okay, so I'm going to give you a minute to read this slide, and then we can talk about it. Also know that I can give this to Arzed. She can share it with you. So just take a minute and read this slide. Okay. So the exploration of yourself, preparing yourself for the conversation, goes back to the title, How to Talk to People You Love About Topics You Don't Love. So why don't you love the topic? You need to explore that. So what are your feelings about the topic? So you identify those feelings, name those feelings: fear, anxiety, hurt, sadness. Usually it's a nice accumulation of all those things, but try to pull them apart and identify them. A lot of times these conversations are hard because we have a sense of vulnerability, right? If we're going to ask this question of someone, they might ask it right back to us. So we need to find our comfort and our own answers without judgment. And have an understanding of why you are asking. Does this information you're looking for, is it just curiosity? Will it deepen your love and care of this person? Some of these questions, I need to care for you better. I need you to understand I'm angry or I'm sad, or how will this help your relationship? Okay, and what's the best way to formulate a question, right? We don't want to be confrontational. We don't want to be demanding. We want to be open-hearted and full of care. So think about the question that you're going to ask. Okay. Again, identify all the reasons that you or this person might not like this topic, and be aware of those in the conversations. You can tread lightly. And the last and most important thing is bring loving kindness to yourself about this topic, so you in turn can offer loving kindness to others, right? So if you are patient and kind and understanding with yourself, you have that same posture with other people. Very hard to offer that to someone else if you're not having that sensation yourself. So again, here we are. The first step is to explore questions, comments, confusions. You can put them in the chat if you feel more comfortable. Next slide. So the next slide, ask permission. Ask permission before you begin. I have a question. Can you talk now? Right? If you're uncomfortable with the topic, the person might be uncomfortable with the topic. So be clear, no surprises. Don't buy a barrette for someone who cut her hair off, right? We want to keep communication going. So you might say, I have something important. It's important to me, and I want to talk to you about it. Do you mind if I ask you a question? And if now's not a good time, when might be a good time for us to have a conversation? So We want this conversation to be two people coming together, not, I don't want to enter the conversation with me just kind of dumping everything I'm thinking about and worrying about. I want to hold back so there's a constant give and take. So again, it's important, be calm and loving and truly curious in the asking and the responsive of the answers to your questions, right? So if the person doesn't answer your question the way you want to, it's not a matter of manipulating them till they get to your answer. It's kind of taking in what they're saying and responding with love, right? If they say, I don't want to talk about it, then
So-
the conversation's over. Yes.
So it's Terry again. So I think that there's different ways to have a conversation, meaning that I walked in, my mom is long gone now. She lived to 94. It was lovely. But when I walked into her house one day, she said, I just want you to know where my last will is. You know, it's over here, you know, and I want you to know where the papers are for this, that, and the other thing. So she sort of initiated things. But it was less of a conversation. It was just like, I've already thought about these things. I don't really want to talk about them, but I want you to know that it's done, you know, kind of thing. The other thing is that there's all these books these days, you know, to fill out. And some people, I think a lot of people, you know, since the conversation is so difficult, to sort of say, I've written this all down. So it's almost like when they give you that information in writing, then you can maybe open up a conversation or maybe not, you know. I mean, it's sort of like just one more thing and then I'll shut up. But I took my mom, unfortunately, you know, as she got older, a lot of people died. And we went to a lot of funerals together. And she would sit there and she would say, I don't like this. I don't want a plain pine box, you know, or whatever, or how could the rabbi, or, you know, whatever. But by going to these funerals with her and the conversation in the car before and after, I learned a lot about what she wanted, you know, but it wasn't in the context of us having a conversation about her death, you know, my asking. So those are just some vignettes that I've lived through, where I think that the information comes out in a loving way, but sort of a roundabout way.
And I would augment what you're saying, because she might be opening up a conversation. When someone gives me something in writing, right? I'm a healthcare proxy for a friend who doesn't have children. And he said, here, it's all in writing. And so I read it and I was able to go back to him and say, I spent a lot of time on what you wrote. You seem to be very thoughtful. Can you tell me a little more about it? And most people like to talk about themselves and talk about what they think and what they want. So you can say to someone, oh, you've given it a lot of thought. I would love to hear more about your thought process. Or you seem to have strong opinions about your funeral. I would love to hear more. So, you know, I'm sure with your mom's generation, the conversations were different from our generation and the next generation, but we can pull more out. We can pull more out. I see those as invitations to talk. But thank you for that. Who else? Stuart.
Suzanne, thank you for this. To take a step back, when you
Yeah.
say, I'd like to talk to you about something, can you give us some ideas of how you present this? Like talk to you about end of life decisions?
Well, first I start with, I want to talk to you about something that's really important to me. Oh, really? Yes, and it's probably a difficult conversation. Like when I said to my mother-in-law, I need to know more about your wishes if you get sick. So you don't have to go right to death. You can say, if you get sick, you know, I want to talk to you about, you know, have you thought about healthcare? You know, my mother-in-law lives in independent living, and I've once said to her, and she's amazing. I've said to her, what happens if, is there some place you might need to live next? No. So you can ask the question a couple head. Instead of talking, what do you want at death? What do you want at end of life? You know, tell me what I should know to take care of you if you get really sick. I want to take care of you in a way that's important to you. I don't know if any of you read Atul Gawande. He writes a lot about this, and he learned from his father that his father would be totally happy sitting on the couch, watching TV all day, eating chocolate ice cream, right? That was okay with him. But there are some people who might say, if you're sick, how do I want to take care of you? You know, if I can't talk to you, then that's my line. Or, you know what, if I can just see my grandchildren, that's all I need. Those are hard conversations, but they don't happen all at once. So you have to take a running start way ahead.
Thank you.
Judith, did you have a question? I thought I saw your hand up. Judith Himber.
Yes, I did. And I'm not sure if it's within the purview of what we're doing today, but I am now sort of the oldest in my family. And I'm 80, and my children really don't want to hear what it's like for me to be getting older. And I watch my partner, who's Oliver Shalom, try to talk with his sons. He said, I feel like I'm slowing down. This was 5 years ago. And they shut it off. You have been, you're out here in California. You can fly out anytime. Nothing's different. And when I talk with my children about, things are different for me now, I'm older. It is just, there is denial that, oh, you're amazing compared to every other 80-year-old that I see at the hospital. Or my daughter's a rabbi and says, I can't bear to think about this. So I don't know how to open it up with the younger generation.
Right. Judith, you are, of course, not surprised, right on the target, right? So it's not a matter of children just talking to parents, or it's parents needing to be open and honest with their children. And it's scary. It's scary to talk about. First of all, I just want you to know talking about death is not contagious. It doesn't make you die. And thinking about people we love in scary situations doesn't make them happen. And thinking about things before a crisis is very helpful, because then we have choices. If we wait till a crisis, there are no choices. It's what's ever available, right? So Judith, I don't know your daughter. There's some conversations people won't have, but it could be, I need to tell you something that's so important to me. It's really going to be hard for you. It's really, really hard for you. I know you can do it because I've seen you do other really hard things.
Yeah.
I know you can do hard things. And I need you to do this hard thing for me, because I need you to hear me. I need you to hear me. And we can talk about how uncomfortable it makes you. I'm happy to talk to you about that. But the most important thing is, I need you to know what I'm experiencing, because I feel like maybe it's time for me to make some plans. You're the one who's going to be carrying it out. So I think putting it all out there, you need her. You need her to be uncomfortable, and this is only going to help the both of you become closer and more helpful to each other.
Okay.
Who else?
Thank you.
Sure. I can't see all the hands because we're on the, could you? If anyone has a question or a comment, just speak up, please, because of my screen.
I have a comment or a question. My name's Esther Greif. I had with my mother for years. She said she never wanted to be home with an aide. She wanted to go to a group, nursing home or whatever. And then in the final year, when she started to get very sick, she totally changed her mind. And so the question I have is, how do you even know what you want until you're in a crisis?
Yeah. So it's always good to have a plan B. So I had a patient, a woman in her 90s, and we all knew she was going to die in a few days. And the son would not hear anything else. He was going to take her home. He's going to take her home. The staff moved mountains to get a hospital room set up in her home. And the son could not hear that that is not what's going to happen. So finally, as he was pacing, and I just went up to him and I just said, "What's your plan B? What's your plan B?" And when I saw him at Shiva, he said to me, "I was so angry when you said that. And then I realized that you were telling me something else was going to happen and I never thought about it." So luckily, we live in Boston and we have so many opportunities here. Sometimes the conversation, so I'm all for communal living. I'm all for people who need assistance to live in community so they're not alone. Sometimes the desire to return home begs the question, what does home mean? Does home mean familiar? Does home often means people's perception of when they were healthier? I'm going to go home because when I'm home, I can do the cooking and do all these things, and that's not really true. So when people often tell me they want to go home, I always ask, what does home mean to you? What does home mean? So a lot of the answers that we get, we need to pull them apart. We need to pull them apart. And Esther, people are allowed to change their minds. And yeah, that's a lot of work when people change their minds. And if it's possible to respond to them in that way, the way we want to for loved ones, then we try to do it. But sometimes it's not possible to change directions. But maybe exploring it, like, what is this change in directions? Okay.
I have a question.
Elaine? I heard Elaine Reisman had her hand up.
One of the things that we have not touched on is taking a look at it from the other side.
Of course.
Our children who are supposedly, I have wonderful kids and they've met all my needs. I'm 93 years old. And sometimes I have to think about, when I get annoyed, I have to think that they're coming at it. It's a loss. I'm not the same mother that I could have been. Fortunately, I'm in good health and I can still walk and do all sorts of things with them. But I think in some regards, when they do certain things, they're mourning the loss of the mother that they knew. And
Yes.
I think that we have to look at
Yes.
both sides of the question.
Yes.
The angry girl is not only angry with her daughter, she's really angry that she's in that situation.
Yes. Elaine, thank you for bringing that up. Yes. We all, look, even in COVID, we have layers and layers of loss every day. And we're all actually, I think, especially raw to the losses we may have been prepared. Yes. How heartbreaking and heart-wrenching it is to watch our mother evolve from a strong younger person into a person who has different strengths and challenges. Yes, Elaine, I agree with you. There's the question of loss, but then that's also an opportunity for a conversation that has a conversation. I'm sorry, I love you, I'm proud of you, thank you. That conversation is, I know you're afraid that, and you're watching me change. And let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Like, what do you remember and what was great? And the things that she's fearing and sad about the loss, that's also a time to remember and show gratitude. So talking about those losses also deepens the relationship and nourishes you both. Yeah, life is losses. my mantra for a long time was love and loss, love and loss, love and loss, that's life. And it's heartbreaking. I mean, I lost my mom 5 years ago. And even after my mom died, the relationship continues, right? These relationships continue to resolution. And we're always feeling that loss. But I think it's important to articulate every step of those losses. Yeah, I just want to go to the last one because we did, hold on.
But just.
Oh, Haley, you want to go?
It was Terry.
Terry, yeah.
I just think, but Elaine, I think you can also celebrate the things that you can do now, you know, and the knowledge that you have that you can relate to people. So there, as much as there's loss, there's also some gain. It's just different, you know.
Yes, and I think one of the greatest gifts we have is to give love and receive love, right? And Elaine, that could be a hallmark of your whole motherhood, and that you still have that ability, right? To give love and receive love. So I find that really powerful. So I just want to go to the last one, because remember the first two, the first one was to explore, and the second one was to ask permission, and the last one is to breathe, to breathe. So breathing intentionally helps for many reasons. I'm just going to read the slide and you could read along with me, right? Taking a deep breath may help you speak more slowly and with more care, which can help to settle some anxiety you might be holding for the topic or what could happen in the conversation. Taking a deep breath gives you time to assess your loved one. So how's this person doing? I mean, Judith, you talked about, you sensed that your daughter, she was very clear she didn't want to talk about it. Maybe they're not ready to move forward. Maybe this conversation is going to take 3 or 4 tries. And when you're taking a deep breath, enables your loved one to process and think. So if you remember all the exploration you did to reach this point, this person is just stepping into the conversation and they need space in the conversation for growth and understanding. So silence makes people nervous, but don't let it make you nervous. Try to embrace the silence. So I want you to think about the printed page. If you look at a page that is solid text, right? It's very dense. If you look at a page that has a lot of white space, right? It's easier to understand. It's easier to experience. And again, have your breath reflect patience, kindness, and love, right? Because breath can also signal impatience. So make sure your breath reflects patience and kindness and love. Questions, comments? Somebody else had a question before. It was Hayla.
Hyla, yes.
Hyla, sorry about that. Hyla, what did you want to say?
I don't know if this is exactly appropriate, but my question is that I'm probably extremely selfish, but I sometimes wish, even though my daughter and son-in-law have made it very clear that if and when I ever need or want to, I can go live with them, and they'll take care of me, and I know they mean it. But sometimes when they, of course, this is not happening right now because of COVID, but when they're here, I feel that they fall into child mode, and I do all the caretaking, and I want the difference. And I don't feel that they recognize that that I'm getting older and that I would like some of that TLC given to me as well. And I feel like a troll even raising it because they have been so clear about if and when, you know, as I said at the beginning. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Wow, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So, yeah. We all need different kinds of care at different times in our life. And, you know, we all talk about the flip. The parent takes care of the child, and then at some point,
Right,
the child needs to help more take care of the parents. And that comes in many different ways. It can be financial. It can be as simple as grocery shopping. But I think this actually goes back to just articulating what's needed. And also, if for some reason you decide to go into their home, right, you need to talk about boundaries and who needs what when. So it's not a free-for-all and of misunderstandings. So I would encourage you to take pen to paper and really try to articulate what's going on for you and what you need and how they could support you specifically in those needs. And if you think it's possible to tell them, tell them that things are changing, life is always changing, and you think, you know that they're so loving and generous, and is it possible for you to articulate to them in a few concrete ways that they might be able to help you? It's not uncommon when we return to the home of our parents to return to the child that lived in that situation. So again, I think your question is spot on. It's right in the middle of what we're talking about. And it again goes back to really thinking through what's happening for you and really being able to articulate what's happening and what your needs are, and then asking them to listen to you because you have something that's really important to you to say, and you trust they can hear because you know that they are loving and kind. Is that helpful?
Very, thank you.
Okay. What else?
I'd like to share something.
Sure.
I learned from my dad in the end of his life, in the last period of his life, that this idea that they take care of you and then you one day take care of them, it's not black and white. And the process I went through with my dad is he began to accept the fact that I'd have to drive, that I'd have to physically assist him. Maybe it was financial assistance. In my case, it wasn't, but for other people it is. But they're still your parent. And like to Hyla's point, you don't have to stop being a parent just because you're relying on help. And even one day in the hospital at Mass General with him, he was still, even though he was helpless and I was hopefully helpful, he was still imparting stories and wisdom and still trying to teach me something. So I think that makes it easier when you don't think of it as a
right. Thank you, Stuart. That's beautiful. Right. It's not all or nothing.
Right, and it's,
Right?
I guess,
It's a dance. Yeah, Stuart, thank you. That's beautiful.
and it's also, I guess that makes me realize that it's not linear, right?
No, what is linear?
Well, I know. Remember Ram Dass used to say, you don't sit in your living room being linear, and that helps.
Right.
That helps me as a way to approach it, right?
It's a dance. It's a dance, and it could be a loving, kind, tender dance, or it can be a boxing match. And I would opt for the former. It's a constant give and take and understanding, and that understanding comes from open-heartedness and conversation. Stuart, I think that you were able to do that because you have such a fabulous wife.
well, that's just a given. That's true of everything I've ever done.
Anyone else? So we'll still have more time. I want to get to one more thing. So people often say to me, I don't like conflict and I don't want to have an argument, right? The fear is, can you just go back to Zoom? So the fear might be that, are you monitoring that? The fear might be that I'm going to start this conversation and it's going to be an argument. It's going to explode. Okay. So when people say, I don't want to have an argument, I don't like confrontation, I say, so don't have one. Don't have one. And an argument or a heated conversation are unchecked emotions. And so there are ways of checking in at our emotions. Can you go back to screen share for a second? Yeah. I just want to show you one thing. The next one. What happened to my tech support?
Your mouse is gone.
All right, can you stop screen share?
No, I can't. Your mouse is gone. I think you ran out of battery. Oh, here we go.
Okay,
Okay. Do you want to go back to screen
I
share?
want to go here. Right there.
Suzanne, while you're going through this,
Here we go. Sorry. So go ahead.
I was just gonna say, there's a wonderful question in the chat, so I hope we get to that.
Okay, I'm going to get to the questions in a minute. This is my last one. So if you don't like a conflict or an argument, don't have one. And this is tangential. This is just another set. This was in the New York Times in October, and it was I just want to point it out, and I'll have Yoni put this link into the chat if you want, or I'll give everyone the slides because I only have like 4 or 5 slides. And these are exercises if conflict arises. How to have I think it's actually how to have a disagreement like an adult. So these are also tools you can put in your back pocket so you can so you can feel more confident about going into a conversation that you're worried about. And if it starts to simmer, you can make sure it doesn't come to a boil. So yeah, Elle, thank you for that. I'm going to look in the chat. So Larry, yes, I'll be sharing the slides. That's fine. I'm going to go to Bernard Cotton. Uncomfortable speaking to people with terminal or severe illness because I don't want to upset them by saying the wrong thing or being intrusive. So my husband always says he's afraid of saying the wrong thing. And whether it's someone with extreme illness or at end of life or whatever, I'm going to Shiva, everything, we're always worried about saying the wrong thing. So here's my suggestion for that. Are you ready? Here's how it goes. I don't know what to say. I just want you to know that I really care about you. And if there's anything I say wrong, I hope you'll excuse me. And you can say, I'm sorry, this must be so hard for you. Or instead of affirming, you can say, tell me what this experience is like for you. So instead of saying, you can ask, I'm afraid of saying anything wrong. I don't want to say anything wrong. I just want you to know that I care so much about you and what you're going through. Can you tell me anything about your experience? And if you're really close with this person, you can say, what are you worried about? What are you afraid of? You know, so often, going back to the kids, maybe they don't want to hear what you're worried or afraid of. Maybe only a friend can listen to that. So much of my time as a chaplain was listening to people what they're worried about. If you read Atal Gawande, I think he talks about that a lot. Like, what are you worried about? I'm worried that people don't know how much pain I'm in. I'm worried that my kids won't come to visit me because it's scary, right? So be upfront. I don't want to say anything wrong, but I really care about you. I have so many friends who sadly have lost children, and they all tell me they want to write a book about all the things that people have said that were just horribly painful. So just start with, I don't know what to say, but I really care. Okay, there's a question in here to me privately. So if you have someone who's close to you who is sick, and you want to have a conversation with the person and not always seem like you're talking about the sickness, you want to talk about other parts of their life. Again, be specific. I want to know how you're doing. I know that you're more than a sick person. I know that you have other concerns in your life. Would you like to talk about those kinds of things? Right? So be as articulate as possible. Be as caring and curious as possible. Two things that really focus me in my work, which is curiosity and compassion, right? Curiosity and compassion. And just a bigger picture, one of the problems that I've had in this country in the last few years is there didn't seem to be curiosity and compassion, right? How are you doing? And how can I help you? Or how can I love you even though you're imperfect, right? A lot of the problem is people think because they're imperfect, they're not lovable. We're all horribly imperfect and we're all deeply lovable. So curiosity and compassion is big. I hope that answered your question. What might make you decide, Phoebe, thank you for this. What might make you decide that the conversation should not be pursued, right? So if you ask and someone really says, no, I'm not going there, or you ask the question and you know when the conversation might change. And even if you back out early, you can say, oh, I'm sensing this is not a good topic for you, or I'm sensing this isn't the right time. And they'll answer you, this is a great time. I'm not sure I believe them. They might say, I just don't have the bandwidth to do it now. Can we try another time? I think if you're as simple and clear and curious as possible, you'll know if it's the right time or the wrong time. I personally, in my personal life, will step back earlier. I'd rather step back earlier. As a hospital chaplain, I just push and push and push because I can. And because I can and I have a goal and there's work to be done. But as a person, as a sister, a daughter, a mother, I'd rather pull back early and try again because our family members sometimes have long memories. What else? Let's see. Any other questions? So I have one here in the chat. I'm just going to read it out loud. So this is a question about, don't people know what they want? Health issues. How can you really know what you want until you're in it? This is why we have conversations ahead of time, because before we're in a crisis, generally people only know broad strokes, right? They only know broad strokes. So I've read volumes on this sentence. People write, I want everything. If I'm sick in the hospital, I want everything. Well, you need to have an idea of what everything means, right? So that's a conversation. Do you want to live on multiple kinds of life support? And these are very serious conversations now that we're in COVID, because we know what everything means. It's an everyday occurrence. So for 7 years, I worked in a vent unit, right? So everyone in this unit was on a ventilator. I learned to read lips really well. I learned the ebb and flow of the emotions. People come in, they're just put on the vent. The anxiety is off the charts. And so people need to have conversations about that. What does everything mean? So people don't always know in the moment or ahead of time what they want, and we can't wait till the crisis. And that's why ongoing conversations are important, because I'll know what you, I will know the kinds of things that are important to you, right? When the son comes in and says, my dad's a fighter. Great, he's a fighter in life. Is this the way he would want to live, right? The other thing is, right, if you're interested in Jewish law, right, Jewish biomedical ethics might be your guiding light. And that will also direct a family for care. And those have some extremes that some people might not be comfortable with. So that's why in my work, cultural competency is important. The African American community, because of decades and decades of bad medical care, they're full on, and that's cultural competency. You just have to know I would never argue with an African American family, because they have every right to get 110% of what medicine has to offer them. So, but we have these decisions to make. Hal, take yourself off mute so I can hear you.
Another suggestion, possibly to have this discussion, is to talk about not what's going on, but something you have in common. For example,
nice.
With my brother, we have a love of tools. So I showed him this tool that I bought.
What is that?
Anybody care to guess? Won't keep you long, but.
Is it a pump?
It's a pump. Yes, it's an automatic tire inflator. And it just took them away from everything that was going on, and we talked about tools and tire inflation and whatnot, and it was terrific. And now we always refer back to tire inflation and whatnot. So just another suggestion.
So yeah, so distractions are helpful. Distractions are helpful, and having a conversation, something that binds you beyond the behind the intensity. Thank you. However, I wanted to focus on how to get through the difficult time. And if you feel that it's so intense, Hal, I think going to a distraction like that is great, because it buys you more time. It brings down the anxiety or the emotions that are rising, and you can distract long enough to figure out, can I go back to the hard part, or we're just going to talk about pumps now? Thank you. That's great.
I have another question, if I might.
Please.
And it's just generic. I don't think it applies to me, but obviously the point of this whole presentation is for us to have the one-to-one or one-to-whatever conversations. But do you ever need to mediate them? Is it sometimes just not possible for families to have them and they need assistance?
Yes, Hyla, thank you. So in my work as a hospital chaplain, often I would sit with an entire family and mediate. And of course, these are difficult discussions. What about a family that's transitioning a parent from living at the home where they lived for 40 years to maybe going into assisted living or full care? And that is a conversation that if there's no crisis, right, requires an evolutionary process of heart and soul and mind. And some siblings don't have working relationships. They don't have a history of working relationships. So I've sat in rooms with adult children who haven't talked to each other in 20 years, right? Also as a rabbi, it happens at funerals too. And so yeah, so especially in a crisis, a mediator is really important if you don't have a meeting of the minds. But stepping back from that is why we have to learn how to have difficult conversations so people don't go 20 years without talking to each other. Holly, does that help?
Yeah, I was just curious and not,
Yeah.
yes, thank you.
So I wouldn't give up if, yeah, especially adult children having to come to terms with care. So I'm one of 5 kids. There are 5 of us in 6.5 years, and we're all really strong-minded, independent thinking people. I have to say that I'm very lucky because we all agreed wholeheartedly how to support our parents, how to support our mom. She was very sick and when she died, and now how to care for our dad. And we all appreciate constantly that having similar ideas has made the journey together almost enjoyable. I do have to say, one of the reasons that we feel so similarly is because I think we were brought up with our parents talking about it. My dad was a pathologist, so we talked about death by gore all the time. And so death and sickness were not alien to our dinner table. In fact, much to the dismay of guests. But so our parents talked about, their hopes and dreams and their worries and their fears. So we really knew how to care for them and then that helped give us a lens that we always shared. So this is something I think that my parents cultivated in us, and it made it a lot easier in our siblings. I'm reading something in the chat. There's a long, since you wrote this to everyone, I'm gonna read it out loud, okay? I'm finding the hard discussions to be with family back in Kansas who want my mother to come back home, but we are unable to care for her. She has terminal brain cancer and other complications that her doctors say make her the highest of high risk, and they agree she would not even survive for a few days with COVID. She could, however, have months or more. We'll learn more when she has her next MRI. Mom came to live with me for 6 months, 6 months ago for treatment at Dana-Farber. I've been her sole caregiver this whole time. So here's what I think about this. I'm gonna have my son Yoni put my email address in the chat. And anyone who has specific, anyone who has specific questions, anyone who has specific questions, especially like the last one, I want you to please feel free to email me. And if we need to, we can set up a time to talk. The question you just asked is very complicated, but it also feels like you have a lot more to say and you need to be heard. And I'm happy to be that person to hear you. Please email me at my email address in the chat, and I'm happy to talk to any of you because part of this discussion is opening up all sorts of conversations that you might not have someone to talk about with. Okay. Terry, did you want to say something? No. What else? Can't believe you don't have a question. Yes.
Yeah, I do. So let's say you do finally have this conversation and you backed your parent into the corner having the conversation. And you
That's not what I said. Yeah.
I know. I'm tongue in cheek, but seriously, you have the conversation and they, let down their guard and tell you, and then you actually have to live through what they've asked for, knowing that it's a very difficult illness that's going to transpire, and you need to walk with them that whole way.
So thank you for that. So in the circumstance that you're describing it out, that's not a once and done conversation. This conversation was a step into a new world of conversations. The situation that you're talking about is you've walked through a doorway into a new room, and you're going to be living in that room together. Again, it's a dance. There's a lot of conversations, and yeah, those life-altering diagnoses, that's a journey. That's a journey. Julie?
So just following that, my mom, demented.
My mom.
Well, I didn't know if you were going to admit to that. Demented in a way that we never anticipated. And we would have conversations with her and she'd say, you know, if I ever have dementia, don't let me live like that. Don't let me do this, do this. And there was really, we heard her, we listened to her, but there was really nothing we could do. So sometimes we have these conversations and we just can't fulfill the wish in the way that person would have liked, because that's a huge step and commitment and decision.
Yes. So when someone gives us a roadmap of how they want to live or how they don't want to live, some of it is making sure we have the right medical care. And in some circumstances, the medical care, the people surrounding our loved one, they might not be on board. So for instance, you can make decisions, no antibiotics. And she had pneumonia and she was given antibiotics. There are steps along the way to decide. But when someone is so miserable, you know, how do we enable them to find comfort? I do find that in Boston, because we talk about it a lot here and we have people like Atul Gawande and the Conversations Project started here, that people are more open to responding to patients with self-determination like that. In some parts of the country, they don't respond to self-determination in that way. But that's really hard, heartbreaking. Yeah, Judith. Judith.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm thinking about back over last days with loved ones, and often at that point, the conversation might be short and it can be very direct. When my husband was dying, he perforated his bowel and they put him on antibiotics, but other than that, at his wish, but other than that, comfort measures only. And they gave us a private room at the Mass General, and we all got our cots and we went in there, and he was giving himself morphine, self-administered, so much that his respirations were depressed. And we thought he was going to die that night. So as his respirations got depressed, I called my son, who wasn't there, and said, what do we do? Do we just let him keep giving himself this morphine, or do we tell him to stop, or what do we do? And he said, well, ask him what he wants. And it was like, oh, yeah. He might be close, but I really wasn't thinking I could ask him. Yeah. And my son got him on the phone and said, sweetie, you're not breathing enough. Do you want the pain, to bear the pain and live a little longer, or do you want to just have the pain relief? And clear as a bell, he said, oh, I'll take the pain. Just
yes. Yes.
That's what he wanted.
Yes, it's good to have choices. And again, Yael, when you enter that room, there's many choices and a lot of conversations we had. Yes, it's always good, Judith, to continue asking the patient what they want. You know, I think, Judith, you're probably the end of the generation that believed that doctors were God, and doctors used to make all the decisions, right? They didn't ask the patient. But the pendulum has actually swung in the other direction. And now they ask the patient, and sometimes they don't even want to tell you what they think. They just want it up to the patient. Sometimes you have to say, no, tell us what you would do for your mother. Right. So, yeah, we have a lot of choices, and the choice of the patient is, I think, paramount. Yes. Thank you, Judith, for that. Thank you. Thank you. It's okay. So I want to, before we end in a few minutes, thank you very much for opening your heart. I will give the few slides to Terry and Arza, and they'll be able to distribute them, including the link to the New York Times article and my email address. And but I want to end on the why again. I want to end on why we go through this physical, emotional, intellectual torment sometimes, because we love each other, and that's how we care for each other, and that's how we deepen relationships, and that's how we enable people to live according to their own wishes, and that's how we learn what people are worried about, what they're afraid about. And each of us is different, and every family tree is different, and so we can only learn through talking. And so my wish for all of you is that you have someone you can talk to, someone who can hear your hopes and dreams and your fears and your worries. And I hope that there's also someone in your life who you can nudge towards meaningful awareness. But most importantly, that you take the time to say, I love you, or thank you, or I'm sorry, or I'm proud of you. Those are all important things to say as much as possible. So I look forward to hearing from you if you have further questions.
Okay, so I just want to jump in here. It's Terry, and thanks, Suzanne, because it's very important to have people like you who can help guide us in this crazy world, and to have these conversations. And I always say there's people that do certain work that I could never do. And so thank you for doing it, because it's very, very difficult. Thank you all for being on this call and learning with Suzanne. I just want to mention that we do have a scheduled next session on February 11th in the evening from 8 to 9:15 or so. We're going to be screening a movie called A Father's Kaddish. It was just premiered at the Boston Jewish Film Festival. There's a local guy and his family, Stephen Bramfman, who unfortunately lost his son at a young age in his 20s. And Steve is a potter, and he and his son were both potters, and he threw pots for 365 days while he was saying Kaddish. And it's a local story, and he will, so after the movie, which is about a half hour long, he will be with us, as well as the director of the movie, Jen Kaplan, who's also local. And I think that will help us continue our conversation in a totally different direction around the issue of death. So we hope you'll join us. And if you signed up for today, we'll make sure that we send you the information. Plus, it'll always be on the Temple Emmanuel website. So once again, thank you, everybody. And on a positive note, we want to wish everybody a happy third day of Hanukkah. There's lots of exciting things coming up at Emmanuel that have to do with Hanukkah. And if you want to bake donuts, if you want to go to space with us, we're going to go to show a film about outer space and Hanukkah in outer space with a Jewish astronaut, all kinds of things. It's all on the website. But let's end today by being thankful for our health as it is and our families, and thankful to Suzanne for being with us today. So Toda Rabah.
Thank you. Happy Hanukkah, everybody.
Happy Hanukkah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.
Yeah.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thanks for coming, Bob. Nice to see you.
Great job, Yoni.
Appreciate it.
It's a team effort, right? That's
Yeah.
family. Family is family.
I should thank
you,
my fan
Suzanne.
club for coming. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks
Arza,
very much.
Absolutely.
Hey,
It's
Sully,
Sully.
nice to see you.
nice to
Warm
see you.
regards to Gail. You're well?
I will. And to your family.
Thank you. You too.
All right.
Okay,
Be
I'm
well.
going to end this. So
You too.
Terry, do you need anything from me?
no, we can follow up on. You should send us the slides. And
Okay.
my son-
Suzanne, I just want to say that was terrific.
Oh,
It
thank
was
you.
great. It was
Thank
great.
you.
Terrific. It was
It
warm.
was a nice group.
The pace was wonderful. You elicited some real issues. I think that people, perhaps some people never thought about, planted a lot of seeds, which was incredibly valuable. And you showed people you can talk about it without dropping dead.
Thank God.
Yeah, thank God. Yeah, and it's all possible, and it's all
Possible, and it's slow, and it's imperfect, and you do it afraid because it's that important.
yeah.
Yoni, you were perfect. Thank you.
I felt better. You know, we all have our anxieties about different things. I could talk
well,
about this all
definitely
day.
over technology.
Yeah, the technology
is
is like, if I'm doing this, I don't want to think about the technology.
No, that's right. I think
This is not what you went to college for. It's not what you got your degree in, you know, and all of a sudden, in order to do anything, we
Is
all
he
have
far
to
away
step
or
up
is
and
he
learn this.
close?
So he just finished at Syracuse.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, so he's here now for a little bit, and he's supposed to have an internship for the spring semester of his senior year.
Right.
It's
Some
my
of them are
son
possible.
graduated from college in the spring, last spring, and it's a very difficult time to enter the work world for sure.
So hard.
Yep.
So
I tell everybody we're very thrilled that we're happy, we're healthy and employed, all four of us.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's a big deal in this day and age. So,
it's
yeah.
so hard.
All right. Well, have a wonderful
Thank you. I'll
Sunday.
send
thank
everything
you
to
again,
you.
Suzanne.
Thank you very much. We'll be in touch.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye, Terry. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks a lot,
Bye-bye.
Arza.